All right, it's October 14th, Thursday night. This is Bill George's class 5. And the chief substitute tonight is Dan. And Beth is kind of assisting for a while, correcting me as I go. So anyway, welcome everybody. Raise your hand if you've picked your organization that you're going to do. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I have 5. How have you guys done your presentations, or how's have you scored them and done all that? Emily, how I think you raised your hand, right?
Yeah, so I've scored actually like 2 or 3.
Okay.
I'm just doing a little external research and trying to decide which one I really want to go with right now. Oh,
super. You're ahead of the game. So next week tonight, we don't have a whole lot of time because the lesson is rather long. So why don't you do your presentation next week? I'm assuming has anybody done a presentation where you kind of like talked about it for a couple minutes? Anybody here? Okay, so we got to knock out a couple people next week.
That this week.
Yeah, what's the volume of pages I got? We'll see. Marco, you got one, you said?
Yeah, I have one already, but I just scored it. Haven't done the presentation yet.
Okay, and you got them scored though?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Charlie said he's working on trying to find one. And Charlie's a pastor and loves everybody. So he loves every nonprofit out there. So we got to help Charlie out a little bit. And Katie, I think you said you had one. And Bianca, you have one? And did you score them?
Yes, I just haven't finished the review, like the questions, but I've already done everything. Yeah.
Okay, because next week we got to probably do at least 4 of you. I don't know if I'll get to any tonight. Gina, you found one?
I found one, and I actually sent my Form 990, my organizational review, and my 990 analysis to Beth and Bill earlier.
Oh,
so
okay.
I just need to work on my presentation, I guess.
Oh, okay. So Beth and Bill, what did they score?
Scored 18.
Wow, sweet. You want to talk about them now? We'll just do it now. You good with that?
Well, I don't have like a formal presentation or anything.
That's not needed. No.
It's not needed?
Nope.
Okay. I thought maybe I needed.
For a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, if you want to talk about it for 2 or 3 minutes, we'll
sure.
count this as your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So I chose a charity by the name of La Cocina. I'm located in Parker, Colorado, and this charity is located in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I chose this charity because I know over the last year and a half, it's been very difficult for teenagers and young adults. There's been a higher incidence of mental health issues. Right now, I know that it's at an all-time high, and I know this because
Can you do me a favor? Spell the name of the organization. I want to look it up on GuideStar while you're talking.
Sure, it's LA, and then the second word is COCINA.
Okay.
And yes, and I have a 14-year-old daughter who has been struggling with mental illness this year. And so that's why I chose this charity.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Their mission is to provide no-cost language to mental health services and programs to people of the Latin origin in the state of Colorado. They have several programs that I found where they get families involved, and even have programs for infancy and early childhood mental health. And so that early intervention is very important. And it looks like over this last year, they supported over 50 families with psychological evaluations. And I think overall, they've helped at least 192 families with their services. And like I said, they scored 18, so that was pretty impressive.
Have you have you had your daughter get with them, or have they been involved at all with your daughter?
No, I haven't been involved with them. Most of the facilities that my daughter's been involved in this year have been within about a 30-mile radius, and Fort Collins is probably about an hour and a half away.
Oh, okay. Listen, would you do me a favor? Send Beth and Bill an email and give us your daughter's name, and we'll put her on our. We have a prayer list. I know this isn't a necessarily a Christian group, but if you don't mind, if you don't want us to, we won't pray. But if you'd like to, we want to help you that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I will.
So super. All right. Well, good work. Excellent job. Any questions from the group? I just kind of sped through the tax return. I didn't double check the scoring. Any questions from anybody? Okay, well, let's get started. We got a lot of pages. And our lesson, or our section tonight is called Societal and Mental Poverty. So it's a little bit of a difficult and challenging presentation. It's a little bit long. It's a new part of our curriculum. So we're still working on various parts of it. And so I might speed through it a little bit, only because I want to make sure we get through it all. So anyway, let's see what my transition thing, slideshow thing does here. There's a question that we start with: is homelessness in the United States getting better or worse? And the answer is already in front of us. It's better in the long term, worse in the shorter term. And California, where I live, is getting much worse, as most other states are getting better. So California might just be front loading that number. This is the trends in homelessness from 2007 through 2018. You can see the lines going down, and it's all homeless, sheltered people, and unsheltered people. One of our, we do GU trips. Of course, you guys are aware of that. One of our service trips, I'll show you a little clip of in a few minutes here, was to a group that works in San Francisco, basically in the Tenderloin district with the homeless, and we've done a couple projects with them. So it kind of gets us up front and personal with the problem. The reality of emotional issues, trauma. I think we're switching a little bit to why people might be homeless. Trauma leaves a lasting imprint on the brain. It's kind of I think it gives it a little bit of damage. People affected by trauma can be re-traumatized in reaction to a conversation that seems harmless to most people. And the third part is even trauma from early childhood can affect people throughout their life. My boss, Stephen Namroff, wrote this section, or this module. Actually, he wrote all the modules, but he had learned some things from going to a foster program that talked about these issues. And he really felt like it gave him a better understanding of how people behave, how people that struggle a little more have reasons why that happens. And so that's kind of where he came up with the topic, and it helped him a lot, I think, in being a lot more sensitive to people and their needs in life. A particular set of traumas called the ACEs have been studied for over 30 years, and the statistics are staggering. The following slides allow you to score yourself. It is possible that doing this exercise will actually cause trauma. So if you think you might be uncomfortable, then you might consider taking a break. So If you want to, the way to take a break is maybe turning the volume down if you want. We're not here to try to trigger, or I guess it's called triggering, you know, giving you a bad experience. So we just like to give you a little heads up on what we're doing here. Beth, do you have any comments on this so far?
Well, I would say that the adverse childhood experiences, it's stuff we don't always think about that might have impacted us. I think longer range, it's one of those things that, you know, maybe you kind of pushed it aside and didn't address it until you became older. And it definitely, as you go through these, we're going to score this. You're going to maybe discover something about yourself that you didn't recognize. And as Dan said, it might be kind of difficult. So take this as kind of just a informational side, not necessarily, you know, thinking, well, this is too difficult for me, but, you know, take an analysis and then transfer it and recognize that when you see somebody on the street, expand your thought process and perhaps be, you know, a little bit more compassionate or even more generous in your thinking of them rather than immediately judging, because we just don't know, you know, what we see on the outside definitely doesn't reflect what's on the inside.
Okay, we're going to have some questions here. And if you want to write down kind of your personal experience, that might be good to do. We're not going to ask you for your number or anything like that, but it might give you a little bit of an idea of maybe why you're experiencing certain things or why others in your world sphere are experiencing things. So the first question they had on the questionnaire was a family member incarcerated? The second one was a family member an alcoholic or drug abuser. The third question was a family member mentally ill or attempted suicide. And suicide is very real in today's world. I personally know 3 people that were pretty close to me that have committed suicide. One of them had taught Sunday school with me. Another had been a board member with me on an organization. And another was the son of one of my partners in a business. So it's been close enough. And so it's a real thing. And I think as the young lady was sharing in this age of COVID, it's probably kind of put a vice on some of the depression that's going on. Did you experience the loss of a parent either through divorce, death, or adoption, fostering? Because divorce rate is so high, you know, maybe half of us have a point there. Was one of your parents physically abused by the other? Were you physically abused often or very often? Were you often humiliated or insulted by a parent? Were you touched in a sexual way by someone more than 5 years older? Did you often go hungry or wear dirty clothes? And did you often feel that no one in your house thought you were important? It's valuing people. I have a couple foster grandkids that are now adopted. And when you get foster kids, when my daughter got them, they were both hungry and, you know, didn't have very good clothes. In fact, my foster grandson, Scott, wouldn't sleep in a bed for about a month because he had never slept in a bed. So it gets pretty brutal. So here's some of the ways, here's how their scores, the percentages of the population out there on ACE. had the scoring, 30. Zero. If you have zero, that was 36% of the people. One, 20, a quarter of us. So zero was about a third of us. One was a quarter, two was 15%, three was 10, four was 12. It kind of climbed up again. And so if you morph that over to homelessness, this is kind of what starts happening. This is kind of why we go through this exercise. Is the greater your number, the more chance of homelessness you'll experience in your life. And so that kind of gives you, if you're 6 or more, there's a 1 in 4 chance you're going to be homeless at some point. Some staggering statistics: people who scored four or more compared to people that didn't have any checkoffs are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with chronic depression, 6 times more likely to abuse illicit drugs, 10 times more likely to attempt suicide. And I think on the second one, there's a lot more depression out there a lot of times than you know. I have 2 of my daughters that I don't know if they would have scored more than a 1 on this thing, maybe a 0, but they have taken medicine for depression. One of my daughters got in bigger trouble than that. And so it really opened my eyes open to the fact that, you can look like a perfect person or kid and yet be pretty depressed. And there's a lot of reason for the depression. But anyway, if you score 4 or more on this thing, it really goes up a lot. So here's some more statistics. People that score 4+ are more likely to drop out of high school. I don't know if you remember in class 2, I think it is, the ones most likely to go into poverty were the ones that didn't complete high school. And so this is another piece of the puzzle on how people get into poverty. Twice as likely to be unemployed, 3 times more likely to regularly miss work, 4 times more likely to have serious problems performing a job. Now, my boss, he learned a lot going through this. And so it helped him understand behavior in the workplace. The problem is what do you do? How do you fix the number 3 item on there, 3 times more likely to miss work and 4 times more likely to have problems performing their job? So I think the benefit is you understand it more. The problem is, how do you manage it as a manager and make it so you're managing a full staff of people and you're managing it on an individual basis, of course, but you also have all these regulations and you have all this other stuff where everybody has to be treated equally. Does anybody have any comments on that little paradox or dilemma, or maybe some ideas on what a manager in an office or a warehouse would do? Nobody? Nobody wants to.
I would
Nobody-
say they're probably going to put the person on notice and eventually terminate them because they don't know the backstory of what's going on in that person's life.
Okay. Now, what if they know what if they happen to know this person's score?
Then I think that they would probably try to find resources for that person. If there's mental health resources through that the company offers, counseling sessions or other things like that, I would think that that employer would try to offer up those services.
Okay. It might, a good strategy might be to listen a little bit more, you know, give that person a little more listening time. But again, if it's habitual over a long extended period of time, you know, it just makes it really difficult. That was a good answer though.
Can I add something?
Sure.
When I worked for Operation Safe House, we had mental health days. So if you really were struggling that day, you were going through something emotionally, it was kind of just let them know that you're going to take a mental health day. You didn't have to give an explanation or anything. Those were free for you to use.
And what did they let you take the day off, or what was
Yes. So they would appreciate it if you could give like a 24-hour notice.
Mhm.
And we had a team of about 7. So if you can get somebody else to cover what you were supposed to do that day, and we were all trained across the board, so we could jump in for each other if we had to.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. That's because mental health is like your physical health. If you have a broken arm or get a broken arm, you take some time off. And mental health is in many ways similar to that because it's your health. I think you would agree though, it's kind of a challenge, right? If you're a boss.
I was gonna say this is like super interesting for me to think about because obviously in a job interview, you're not gonna bring up the hard things that you've been through. And as we go through these things, I love trying to think of like a personal application. And definitely from this, it's a reminder of how, you know, whether we're an employer, whether we're an employee, whether we're a student, we ultimately are never going to fully understand what those around us have been through. And I loved hearing kind of some of these ideas that are thrown out, but it's a reminder to me as well that just there's kind of a baseline of respect that everyone deserves, and that sometimes in like the stress and the demands of a business interface, that's hard to meet.
Right.
But I don't know. This is definitely interesting to think about.
And maybe one thing you could do is adjust the type of work they do, possibly. Sometimes compensation is linked to that, but I guess the biggest benefit is you understand that people are wired differently. People have more challenges than you can see, and being generous in your acceptance of people is probably a good thing. The science behind the statistics, cortisol and adrenaline give us our fight or flight responses to situations. So like a lot of times if you're an athlete, your adrenaline level gets really high. And so you perform probably at an athletic level. However, these chemicals created by our bodies become toxic to our body after 20 minutes. And people who live under prolonged chronic stress will see changes to their brain chemistry. So I think one of the things you could see, maybe pick up there, is if you're in a stressful situation and you can keep it to less than 20 minutes somehow, that's a good thing to do, because it's after 20 minutes it goes into another space where it's damaging to your brain. The amygdala, which controls fight or flight, in other words, do I fight this guy attacking me, or do I run away, gets separated from the frontal cortex, the front part of your brain, which controls logic. The body takes over and reactions don't make sense to observers because they didn't involve logic. So you get in a situation where you maybe do something that normally you wouldn't do or a person would do. And it's not logical, but it's because the amygdala is taken over. And we have no choice in the way our body responds sometimes or decides how to respond in this situation. A double bind occurs when the caregiver of a child is also their traumatizer. And so my grandson, Scott, came out of this where the mom was the traumatizer. The problem is it was compounded because his brother and sister were also traumatizing him. So it was a huge issue because it was, 3-on-1. What had happened, I think, his mom started neglecting him, and his older sister became like the mom. But the only thing she knew how to do was traumatize. The health cycle is the child has a need, caregiver meets the need, and child feels comfortable. That's healthy. And that's the way it is, especially if you have a complete two-parent family. I think your odds are a lot greater. It's not that it can't be good with single parents, but I think the healthiest way is both parents. When the caregiver does not meet the need, or the caregiver meets the need, but with anger, fear, or confusion, the child is not comforted. The child is afraid and confused. The brain experiences confusion that has lasting effects in the chemistry and DNA. The child will develop a coping mechanism that lasts in some way throughout adulthood. If I feel discomfort, I won't be comforted is kind of what takes over. Even after many healthy cycles, the brain doesn't learn. So sometimes the negative things that happen to us in life just stick there because I think some people think for every negative thing that happens to you or negative experience, you have to have at least 10 positive experiences to kind of be equal. That's in a way how sensitive we are. Your body subconsciously mirrors the emotions of people you are in contact with. So if your parents are traumatizing you, that's your body is mirroring that trauma. It's why you smile when someone smiles. And we all know people that smile a lot, and most often we feel really good around those people. And a lot of times it's because that's how they're made, how they're wired. But it's a nice thing because the smile makes us smile. Some of you in this group tend to smile a lot, I can tell. It's why you fold your arms when someone else does. So you're mirroring the behavior. It's why you yawn when someone else does. It's why you have a reaction when watching pain on TV or in a movie. Our brains mirror trauma long before we develop reasoning or logical skills. So that's why trauma in the lives of the real young is so hard, so difficult. My daughter, with the two foster kids that she adopted, really thought long and hard about the second one, because there was times when he would flip out and it was hard to get him managed again. And the problem was he was just going back to his early childhood. And so, and people, I think, learn as they go. The adopted foster kids are always going to be, quote, more difficult, only because they've had much more trauma in their lives. But if you understand that, at least it gives you it gives you understanding of why they're behaving the way they are. And it probably gives you a little more patience, and it also helps you search for ways to kind of get them through the valley. Trauma can be experienced in the womb and during childbirth. It's when people say abortion doesn't affect the preborn baby, I go, right there. Infants feel anxiety, anger, and a fear from their parents, or infants feel the baby out of the womb right away knows if you're angry, have anxiety or fear from the mom or the dad. They have that sense. Parents with high scores often resolve to stop the cycle. I have a sister-in-law that I don't know if her score is more than a 2 or 3 on this thing, but she's just been forever in a welfare state for like 30 years. And we were hoping her daughter would break the cycle. And she's made several good attempts, but it's so easy for them to fall back into it. They make sure their children don't experience these traumas. So why do many of these children have a high rate of anxiety and other issues? Thanks to mirror neurons and modified DNA, parent trauma is often passed to the children. So it's a tough deal. Here's some quotes from the Bible. Don't bow down and worship idols. I'm the Lord your God, and I demand all your love. If you reject me, I will punish your families for 3 or 4 generations. So this is a little bit of what we've just been talking down. It gets passed down. Sharp words cut like a sword, but words of wisdom heal. And that's a good, that's some good input for us, like for tomorrow, our lives. Our words and our attitudes speak volumes. I'm always really sensitive to the tone of words, and I can tell. Most of us can, actually. And somebody might say a word, but the tone tells you they mean something else. Trauma-informed interactions. If you knew ahead of time you were interacting someone with a high trauma background, you might behave a certain way. And it's like we were talking about a little bit, what do we do as the manager? You might have more patience. You might speak more gently or quietly, I think would be another way. I think in a way you might touch them lightly too, maybe on the shoulder, or, we're so paranoid these days on hugs and, all that stuff. There was a lot of good things that, hugging and giving and being a little bit physical in the proper way with people really help people. And these days it's like, because of COVID and just kind of how weird our society is, it's like, for example, I'm a guy, and if I used to hug women a lot more than I do now, but we lose something. We lose. It's because we're people that love affection, love proper affection, and when we shut down, really we shut down ourselves, we all lose. You might want to give them more second chances. That's the tough part too when you're the manager. You got HR departments and you have people suing all the time. Makes it a little more difficult. So I've spoken for a while. Let's see. Adrian, do you have anything you want to chime in with on all this? It's kind of intense a little bit. Or Katie, you have anything? I don't know, maybe Adrian is getting coffee.
Sure. I am an educator, so I've been learning about cases for years. I find it very interesting. I think you're right in looking at students individually and considering the backgrounds that they have and their behaviors and their choices, their motivation, their mental health. It's all a factor in it. And I'm also doing coursework currently related to trauma and releasing trauma. And what I'm finding very interesting now is the generational trauma and how it is carried on, how our DNA is changed, and then how to deal with that and how to support people to rewire their neurons to, it's not a choosing of positivity, but it's a rewiring of the brain, releasing the emotional triggers with the situation and being able to calm the amygdala and the fight or flight and realize like it's okay, I'm safe now. And through that, being able to work through those situations. And I appreciated what Gina said too, and the employees offering employee assistance programs. I think for directors or bosses, just realizing this might be an issue for some of their employees and providing classes and skills to work through their own trauma and help them to become more self-empowered and advocates for their healing and moving forward.
I should have had you teach this.
This
there
is my week. I love this week. Yeah.
Is there any part of this you didn't agree with or you thought was a little bit off?
No, I think it's what I found interesting was just revisiting the statistics. I think it had said with 4 more ACEs strikes against you, how much the homeless rate goes up, and just realizing that these people are in a cycle of trauma, and it's not necessarily, it's beyond a choice. It's chemistry in their brain. It's the fight or flight. It's the cortisol, the stress, you can't think logically, like they know something's wrong, but if you're in that fight or flight, you can't think of ways to get out of it. And so, it goes along with having our basic needs met. And if our basic needs are met, we can go into those other areas and we look at people and children with those high ACE scores. Their basic needs of safety aren't being met. And so they're not able to kind of rise up out of that without support services.
One of the problems with all this is we can be educated to death on it and learn, like Katie has, a lot. It's just I know people at the mission in San Francisco. They work on the video I'll show you. It's just it's just so many homeless there, and I also knew a lady friend of mine, and she fed the homeless every Sunday for like 8 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And then she couldn't handle it no more, because what they run into is nobody changes. They can't break the cycle. And that's always the hard part, is breaking the cycle. And, it's just, I guess that's why we have God, right? It's like we need that dimension of God in people's lives to break the cycle.
Yeah,
Anyway,
having the resources and the skill set, and like just thinking ACEs has been around, I think you had said, or it's been researched for 30 years.
Right.
And I hadn't heard about it until well into my teaching career. Right. I'm sure some people are just hearing about it. And so I think it gives other people this aha of compassion for other people to see the why behind the behaviors. And I think that gives us eyes of grace and compassion to maybe be more willing to support them or help them find resources or mental health support.
Yeah. Yeah. You might have more patience, you might speak more gently, you might give them more second chances. What if we don't know whether someone has a high trauma background? Like, you know, most people aren't going to just be coming forward with this and saying, I'm a 5 or a 3 or a 1 or a 10, 8. What would the costs and benefits be of treating everyone as if they had a high trauma background? That's a good point. In other words, be sensitive, listen to people, work on listening skills. That's a thing I don't ever hardly see, is really good listening skills where somebody feels like somebody actually listened to you. Somebody was going to say something.
I just wanted to say something. Something happened just, was it, I think this week. And it was very heartbreaking. One of my pastor friends called me to his home and wanted me to assist him pray for a girl who lived in New York and apparently was his other pastor friend told him about her. So she was asked to come to him to help in that, for that assistance. So he invited me. And so I met this girl, and my pastor friend planned for us to meet with her in the evening, but he asked somebody else to come and assist her because he felt that it looked as if for days she had not, she was unkempt, like taking a proper bath or that kind of a thing. And her problem was a mental health issue. And so this girl came to help her and to take her to her home so that she can get herself, in proper shape, and then we meet her and assist her. And before we know it, she took another turn altogether. She said she was feeling insecure, and we were having calls on the way that this is what she was saying. And before we knew it, she just called the police on the girl who was trying to assist her. And we were heartbroken, and listening to all that is going on, I'm becoming a little bit more empathetic about her situation. When you see somebody like that and you want to help and they think something else, and by the time you know it is completely out of hand.
Yeah, I think I understood you clearly that you guys were helping somebody and then they called the police. Did I understand that pretty well?
Yes.
Okay. And also I have a sister-in-law, or actually a niece, and she was a counselor, and somebody pulled a knife on her and locked the door. And so, yeah, I think you have to be really, really super careful. A lot of times it's probably always have, when you're helping people, you have a sense that they might be a little bit, things might be a little tough. And so there's probably a lot of good sense to have two of you when you're doing stuff, especially, in certain situations. Anyway, it's not an easy problem. Work life versus home life. This is another part of this, is how people are at work and how they're at home. If there's healing work at work or home, safe healing at work or home, that's the best life to live. That's the best way to have your life. A healthy job and a healthy home. If it's unsafe at work or home, and then at work it's safe or work it's safe, you're in a survival mode, and there's not going to be emotional growth because half your life is messed up. It's unsafe. So if it's unsafe at work, probably the best thing to do is get another job if you can. If it's at home, it's a little more complicated. Work at home is safe but not healing. Or a home or work. Work at home is unsafe. So it's kind of in neutral and then negative on this side, then you start to slowly deteriorate. Unsafe at work and unsafe at home. Your life spirals out of control emotionally. And that might be when you go into the homeless mode. And you might even go in the homeless mode and still live in a house. You're just in a real desperate place where you don't have a home for your heart, your soul, or yourself. Top reasons for homeless short-term. Okay, there's some short-term homelessness. We're kind of breaking it out here a little bit. Job loss. It's a big one. In COVID, there was a lot of people that lost jobs. Unsafe housing conditions. There was that big apartment building in Miami that kind of fell apart about a year ago. And so people were in short-term emergency shelters at that point. A lot of fires in California, so the same thing. You can't live in the house because it's burning down. Medium term is transitional housing, family conflict, runaways, domestic violence, recent incarceration. And then long-term homelessness, substance abuse, and mental illness. Is it possible that our brains lead us into homelessness and substance abuse due to trauma? If so, how should this affect how we look at these problems? And how should this affect how we interact with these people? What is the best way? Here we go back to the work situation. What is the best way for your company or organization, your company or the one you work for? What's the best thing for them to do? Meet the immediate needs of food, first aid, shelter, etc. I work at Power Plus, and I'm the national IT manager, so I travel around a little bit. Sometimes I work in the evening, and I ran into one guy in our San Diego office, and he was driving so far that he was living in his car at night during the week. So I'm not exactly sure what we did, but sometimes there's no easy answers, that's for sure. Stage 2, meet the practical needs of job training, rehab, etc. So if you can train more, if you can have good classes on mental health. The thing is, people have to want to help too. They have to want to be trained. They have to want to learn. They want to grow. It has to be both sides. Provide longer term healing for emotional and mental health issues. And it's like one of you said, there's a mental health day you can take for any reason. And that business, I think you said it gave you a couple days a year. So it's one way they're trying to help out. Here's some resources. There's 2 books here. And I'm going to play a little bit of the clip on Switch on Your Brain. Phil's been really good about sending you the notes, and I need to remember to do that. Send the PDF. Let me stop the share a minute, and let me see if I can find the clip. Here we go, right there. So I got to go back to share. This is on Switch on Your Brain, the one resource you said there. And I also will send you an email tonight. One of the guys that teaches this, our classes, gives people really good emails as far as if you want a bunch of information, it's there. Tonight's video clip. So I'm going to play this. Could you guys hear that? No?
No.
Did you hear that? No. Oh, okay. Why isn't it playing? Ah, it's because I didn't hit share.
Okay with that
Yes, oh,
title?
absolutely. No, totally. From very young,
You can hear that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
it always fascinated me, the whole science and science of the mind and research. And so it's been pretty much my life.
Okay, and your newest book is called
Switch on your brain.
Switch on Your Brain. And in Switch on Your Brain, you go through a process, 5 steps. Tell us a little bit about that and how you walk through it.
Okay, well, basically thoughts are real things. So as we're thinking, like right now, we're talking about things. So we've got information going through that we're receiving, going through our brain. And that becomes, as we are thinking about that with our mind, our intellect and our will and our emotions, we turn that into a physical thought. So our thinking becomes a physical thought. And that process of how our thinking becomes a physical thought is what I've researched. And your brain goes through, or your mind, and it's reflected in your brain, goes through 5 major processes. Obviously, there's multiple processes, but it can be grouped into 5 major processes. And from the research, I developed a technique that I used to use with my patients. I practiced for nearly 25 years and did brain research for 30 years. I still do brain research. I don't practice anymore because I travel the world teaching this stuff now. But basically, the technique enables a person to be able to get their mind ordered and under control. And where your mind goes, your brain simply follows. So if you train your mind to be in order, your brain will actually follow the process, which is exactly what the Word of God says.
Wow. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about things in this way and the science of it and be a person of faith. A lot of times people think that those two don't go together. What do you say to people who say, well, you can't believe in science first and then also that it works for your faith?
But it's always I find that crazy, because if we think of it, God, and people ask me that all the time, it's like this, there should be a separation. I said, but there can't be a separation because God made everything. So science is simply a description of the everything. So science is just a tangible way of understanding how we as humans function and how the world functions. So it's a description of creation, it's a description of who we are, it's a description of the physical. So it's the most natural thing because it needs to reflect the spiritual. And that's exactly what research is actually showing. All the research is actually catching up with the Word of God, which is quite interesting. So it's a natural connection. It's not the separation that people see.
So for you,
So that's a little clip from that author. Let me get out. Whoopsie. Got to get out of my screen over here. There we go. All right. Any comments on that? It's the book we recommend, Switch on Your Brain. That's Carolyn Leaf. It was a little clip from her book. Okie dokie. Here's a good question. Why should we care? We got enough problems in our lives. Our mission at GU is to ignite generosity, leave the world a better place. I think somebody was going to say something. Anybody? Somebody have a comment? We live in a world surrounded by people suffering from societal and mental poverty, hurting, lost, adrift, disconnected. What can we do to help? Generosity defined: freely giving or sharing things we value for the benefit of others. So, what we suggest is be a generous person. That kind of takes the edge off and it makes other people's lives better because we're generous. Generosity is something we live out in our lives day to day, freely given or sharing love and kindness for the benefit of others. And so try to look for ways to be generous. One thing that helps me when I teach this, it's like any of us that teach, it helps you grow because you start doing what you're teaching. It's easy to preach, hard to live, right? And so look for ways to be generous to other people. Here's some consideration from the New Testament. And now I give you a new commandment: love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. My children, our love should not just be words and talk. It must be true love, and it shows itself in action. So my teaching tonight is words and talk. Okay, it's good stuff, but it is what it is. It's words and talk. For me to exercise true love, I need to go out and do it and show it to people.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
I can see your screen.
Oh, did I forget to share again?
I don't know if it's just me or everyone.
No, I forgot to share. I got to be more generous and start sharing, right?
I was impressed. I thought you were just reciting scriptures. So
Yeah, it's not quite. I'm not quite that good. Be always humble, gentle, and patient. And so part of the problem with some of the scriptures is like there's no way out. It says always. Not, you know, not on Sundays when you're like a little more religious. Not at 10 o'clock once you've had some coffee going through you. It says always. So that's a tough one. Show your love by being tolerant with one another. Where's the hardest place to show that? Anybody? Most of the time it's with the people you live with. At least it is for me. How did we get here? Let me move my little thingy here. Generational shifts from the 1960s to the 1980s. Free range childhoods unchaperoned by adults. In other words, parents not being parents. Learning from life experiences, both good and bad. And then the 1990s to the present, rise in awareness of crime, especially directed at children, has become more prominent. So we're a lot more aware of it. An effort to rein children in and keep them safe. And sometimes I think we overplay that part a little bit, the safe part. I think, you know, we become so protective that people can't experience life. A flight to safety in schools, dangerous play, structures removed, moderated recess. In other words, kids can't be kids. Anti-bullying, anti-violence, zero tolerance. I think that's one of the most destructive things going on right now is zero tolerance. Is we have all these people going back 15, 20 years on things that, yeah, aren't good, but there's no grace. There's no forgiveness. It's like, do people change? Of course we do. It's just, you know, total damage. The message, life is dangerous. That doesn't mean we don't try to be safe, but life is dangerous. Adults, an example of my life is I'm going to do a trip to Lebanon for GU. And I have a lot of people telling me not to do it. And it's like, so what do? We don't help people out because, you know, it's tough over there. It doesn't mean we do dangerous things, but it means we don't just, you know, live in a foxhole. Adults will protect you both from strangers and from other kids and from anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. In other words, they won't let you go through conflict. And so you can learn from conflict as a kid and learn how to work it out. You're always protecting them. One thing I've seen as an adult, I think we really are very overprotective of our kids. Let me tell you what I mean. My daughter went to college and I couldn't afford to pay her way. I was able to help her a little bit, like a quarter, 25, 30%. But every other kid that she was friends with had their way fully paid by their parents, pretty much. But my daughter learned to have a job. She learned to work through it. She learned to live within a tough budget. And so in the end, my daughter ended up being, I think, more healthy, not because I didn't give her money, but because she learned how to be an adult and grow into being an adult. And I see it all the time, especially parents that are pretty well off, is everybody's overprotecting everybody, especially kids. I know 40-year-olds that are living at home still. It's awful. Anybody have any experience in all this adult stuff and the kids stuff? Nobody? Anybody? I know kids live at home a lot longer than they used to. And I'm sure it's because the world is tougher, but that's just what people say all the time. And so, and it's tough. I have a friend, his kid's 40 years old, living with him still. But in the end, he's really damaging his kid's life, because at a certain point, and it's easy for me to say, at a certain point, you got to let your kids go. Otherwise, you'd wreck your family, unfortunately.
40 years. Did you 40 years?
You're breaking up a little bit on me.
But I was asking if you said 40 years.
40, yeah, I said 40 years old, right? I did.
Okay.
Kids for life.
Right.
Transitioning to adulthood, desire for continued overprotection from anything that makes us feel endangered. Protection from actual physical harm to even words and ideas that make us feel uncomfortable. I think they call that safe spaces or something like that. It doesn't mean you have to be abusive, but it means you have to let people live a life and learn how to negotiate their life. This fosters self-righteousness, close-mindedness, moral crusades, and even hostility. And it's the death of critical thinking. I think one of the worst things that's going on right now in our culture is people trying to silence other people. And because they have a different opinion. And, I can understand closing down pornography and very violent stuff. But when people have a different point of view than you, and you close it down, you're killing your culture. And it's healthy to have people in your life that think different than you, that maybe have a different faith, have a different political view, have a different world experience, worldview, because it makes you healthier. It makes you see other sides of things. And it helps you understand, and it helps you cement in your mind why you believe what you believe. Because if you don't give things some critical thinking, you just think whatever, whatever the latest influence on your life is. Long-standing educational theory: don't teach students what to think, teach them how to think. Teach them how to research. Teach them how to take 2 points of view and think about both sides. Strong minds discuss idea. One of the things I do on our trips, you guys know I'm of the Christian faith. One thing I like to do on trips, though, is I like to learn. I think we were in Hungary, and I like to learn. I wanted to learn about the Muslim faith and what they thought, and how they saw the world, because that helps me. If I really have a faith, it helps me understand my faith. It helps me understand where they're coming from. And if my faith has some truth to it, then I can discover the truth. If it has areas or parts of it that aren't true, the discussion can help me change to the truth. And so I like to say, let's have a good discussion, be respectful. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. That's a really good statement. By entertaining a thought, I think it means mull about it, think about it, put yourself in that position. If you're in a debate, take that position, even though it's opposite of yours, and really give it some thought. This is disappearing in higher education. It's disappearing in our lives. Is where it's disappearing, and all we're doing is shutting everybody down. Unfortunately, what is the impact of this overprotective shift on young adults as they enter society as independent adults? They're less prepared to handle life's challenges because you got to have a few battles to be able to deal with it. Your parents won't always be there. Somebody's not always going to take care of you. And you have to be able to navigate and take life as it gives you challenges. And we've all been broke. We've all had our hearts broken. We've all been in fights. And the more we know how to deal with that, the better off we are. Emotionally fragile, unable to cope with stress. I think if you have a lot of stress in your life too, a good thing to do is find something fun that helps you deal with that stress, and try to plan some fun. There's some people that are really serious people that are great people, but sometimes they don't plan a little fun in their lives, and I think it builds a little bit in their lives, too much stress. So always try to build in fun. My daughter and I always tried to say Monday was the best day of the week. And we'd always have an event on Mondays that would make it kind of fun, kind of cool. The only problem we had with that, it was Tuesdays. So anyway, but we were just trying to learn how to deal with Mondays. Constantly seeking safe spaces. Migration to either isolation or surrounding themselves with like-minded people, which is tribalism. And if you have faith in who Christ was, his life was, he didn't isolate himself, or he wasn't surrounded by like-minded people hardly ever. He was always in situations where people thought 100% opposite of what he thought. And he's a great role model of how to take it all in. Just marvelous. I think the greatest thing about faith is, or God is, in my mind, is he gives you the choice. And he doesn't force himself on you. A culture that allows the concept of safety to creep so far that it equates emotional discomfort with physical danger. It's a culture that encourages people to systematically protect one another from the very experiences embedded in daily life that they need in order to become strong and healthy. Teaching kids that failures, insults, and painful experiences will do lasting damage is harmful in and of itself. Human beings need physical and mental challenges and stressors, or we deteriorate. Those are some tough statements. Nobody likes failures, insults. Who likes pain? Nobody. But it's because of pain that we grow a lot of times. Tribe is a group of people that feel connected to each other in a meaningful way because they share something in common that matters to them. The group allows them to make the distinction of us and them. Tribalism is a pattern of attitudes and behaviors we tend to adopt when we come to identify with our tribes. Hurting people can migrate to tribes to find safe places. Depending on the tribal identity, a person can find themselves further isolated from society. Part of the problem with a lot of my friends is they all want to leave California. But my opinion is this, it might be tough right now. You might not like it. But if everybody leaves, it's like what different, nobody fixed anything. And it's better to stay and push back and be honest, confront things you think are wrong, and be an example to people. Depending on the tribal identity, a person can find themselves further isolated from society, can lead to greater difficulty integrating into society. And it's greatly facilitated by social media. Social media is a topic by itself that you could spend a couple of weeks on. I would say this on social media though, you can make it what you want it to be. And I do IT work, and I set up a friend of mine, he was an older guy, and he didn't want Facebook. And I said, well, why don't you just give it a try? I said, you can make it whatever you want it to be. And so I set him up and I logged him in and set him up. And the first thing he saw was pictures of his grandkids. And I always tell people, make it what you want it to be. You don't have to do all the stuff that's not any good. Just make it the good part. There's obviously bad parts. There's obviously abuses. There's obviously spending too much time on this stuff. But on the other hand, our phones I know we spend a lot of time on this, but it's because they do so many things. They're like our camera. They're like our alarm clock. They're like our weather thing. They're like all kinds of stuff. And so just be healthy with it. And also say the positive things about it, not just the negative. Here's the us versus them, good, right, worthy, rational, true. The bad guys are bad, wrong, unworthy, irrational, false. That's them. That's us versus them. Both the physical and electronic isolation from people we disagree with allow the forces of confirmation bias, groupthink, and tribalism to push us still further apart. Children who have been social media natives practically all their lives easily become enraged at each other. That's true. Prone to judgmentalism and to pursue moral campaigns, are stunted socially and cannot integrate well into adulthood. Also, they can be sexually tracked down and become sex slaves, unfortunately. 6 ways social media affects our mental health. It's addictive. It triggers more sadness, less well-being. Here's the big one, comparing our lives with others is mentally unhealthy. Usually when we post photos on Facebook, I love photos, I'm a photographer, but we always post our good stuff. And then, what we're doing is saying my life is better than your life because look how cool I am. But on the other hand, too, it's good to be positive, good to show the good side of what you're doing. And there's a lot of good things that you can do with photos also. It's not just one way. It can lead to jealousy, a vicious cycle spawning an undercurrent of rage and hatred. We get caught up in the delusion of thinking it will help. More friends on social media doesn't mean you have more friends. It's just Facebook friends. Any comments? We're near the end. Any comments on Facebook or social media? Or one of the projects we've done at Giving University, we're going to release a movie in a week called Groomed, and it's a movie about how kids get trapped into sex trafficking on their phones. And I know I was saying some good things about Facebook because there are good things, but there's ways that kids get trapped and then they get blackmailed. And that's how it all kind of gets into that vicious cycle. So stay on our email list. It'll be somewhere, but it'll be really good. One of the ladies working with us is going to show it in the high schools and the junior highs out in Inland Empire to start. But we're trying to help people realize you got to watch your kids on those things. But I don't know if I think it, you have to be real in life. And so kids are going to be on them. I think you just have to teach them how to use them correctly. Do them for the good stuff. Maybe give them a time limit, something like that. There's a chat on here. Oh, on that email, can you email Bill or Beth?
Sure. Yep, I've emailed them both, but Beth
you
knows
have?
the correct one, just not Bill yet. Yeah.
All right, email Beth
Thank
and
you.
tell her to get Bill in shape.
Okay. Thanks.
Tell him Bill to quit being a slacker. Let me get back to sharing like I'm supposed to be here. Share this one and hit share. I forget to hit the last share. That's what happens sometimes. And you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for paying attention. The primary cause of the increase in adolescents' mental health is frequently use of smartphones and electronic devices. Less than 2 hours a day seems to have, that seems to be healthy. Adolescents who spend several hours a day interacting, even if they start in their early teens, have worse mental health outcomes than do adolescents who use these devices less and who spend their time face to face. So it's just not good to be on there for long periods of time. But people always forget that in the old days, people used to just sit there and watch TV all the time. The number of hours of TV watching were extremely high, and it's probably just as bad as this. This might be worse because they can hide it a little easier, or maybe a lot easier. This is from Jean Marie Twenge. That's how you say that. Medication versus psychotherapy. Medication, psychotherapy, and their combination are effective in helping people with emotional and behavioral problems. Depression. Preferred treatment is cognitive behavior therapy and interpersonal psychotherapy. A lot of big words here. Possibly augmented by antidepressant medications. And 2 of my girls are on slight medications, and I think I've learned to adjust a little bit to the reality of that. I will say this, there's more people doing it now than there used to be. Let's just put it that way. And, my daughter got in trouble, and so she was doing some of this. What you worry about as a parent, though, is you don't want them to be addicted. That was the part that I had the hardest time with. But I kind of surrendered to the fact it was helping her, at least right now. But you just always, I always encourage her to make sure she's talking to her therapist and trying to see if the levels are coming down, because you don't want to have people be long-term addicts. But anyway, I've learned a little bit of grace, or maybe I gave up, one or the other. Anxiety disorders is cognitive behavior therapy, antidepressant medications, and anti-anxiety medications. Schizophrenia or bipolar is antipsychotic or mood stabling medications required. Cognitive behavior, family psychotherapy can improve functional outcomes. And that's a lot of probably where you're homelessness, there's a lot of this going on. Helping those who are hurting, both psychotherapy and medication treatments are successful over time. Without a supportive environment, most people do not continue with necessary treatment. So you got to encourage people to work with their therapist, work on being healthy, have some fun stuff in their lives, get some good exercise, eat right, all that stuff. Or lean too heavy on medication-centric treatments lacking critical psychotherapy. The results are societies are filled with many emotional hurting and isolated souls. Large numbers. One thing you have to remember, we're in the richest country in the world. And so we're very fortunate because we have a lot of ways of at least trying to deal with this stuff. Many places you know, you guys saw the numbers in Africa, the daily amount of money people were making, you know, it's mind-boggling how hopeless it can be. Large number of children step into adulthood unprepared for life as an adult, especially children that receive disorder or moderating drugs that suppress their ability to learn and socialize accordingly later in adulthood. And I think there's been a lot of abuse with boys, especially giving them, you know, medication at such young ages. I think that it's kind of taken a toll on that side. Childhood overprotectiveness, tribalism, social media, and the lack of long-term continuous mental health assistance make the situation far worse. Taking action begins with each of us as we interact with the world in which we find ourselves in every day. And so we need to be the priest, the pastor, the encourager, the role model. We need to be that. The GU alumni has to be that. Government programs cannot address any of this stuff. They probably make it worse. They do help sometimes, of course, with a lot of stuff, but it has to be the people. Nonprofits and churches that are on the front lines in addressing societal and mental property need our support and we're proud for our participation. So help or donate and do what you can. And I will say this, a lot of churches are a lot more in tune with mental health issues now, I think, than ever before. I think they're not avoiding it, they're trying to help. So there you go. I'm gonna see what I got over here. I'm going to play you one video. First of all, any questions, any comments? I'm going to have you out of here in 3 minutes. So that was really a lot. And a lot of it, in my opinion, isn't totally related to generosity. I think it could be pared down a lot. But I think it gives you a little bit of perspective, because we're not a mental health class, but it gives you a lot of perspective on the homelessness, and hopefully it helps you be a little more kind and gentler with people. And so it's good stuff. I just think sometimes it's a little bit much and we're just kind of talking at you. And you guys, there was some really great comments. Was it one of you could have taught this for me? Katie, right? Was it Katie? Yeah, there you go. We did a class with Cross Purpose in Denver. Cross Purpose is an inner city nonprofit where they work with guys out of prison, guys or girls, living on the streets, whatever, just that, you know, homeless. And they're trying to lift them up by giving them kind of a curriculum where they go to class, they learn job skills, they go through a lot of this stuff. But even for them, it's hard because only 1 out of 10 makes it, because the people have to want to do it. You can't make them. But it's a great program. It's called Cross Purpose in Denver. And the way you graduate is you do all this stuff, you do all these classes, and you have to get a job making at least $18 an hour. So to get your graduation, you have to do all the steps because they want you in a job. No, they want you responsible. So it's really great. They just do such nice work, and it's difficult. I'm going to show you, we did a service trip to a place called City Impact in San Francisco. And that's what I'm going to show you real quick. And then we'll be done. And then next week, you've got to jam through some of those presentations. Let me share screen, pick the right one, hit share, and then hit play. You guys can hear that, right? Hello, hello?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
This conference is all about refreshing others, and then you yourself will be refreshed. And the vision for this conference today is that many of you be stirred up from within. Heavenly Father, we call upon you right now in the name of Jesus. We believe that this is your time. We believe that this is your city. We believe, God, that you care about this place. And we pray for the Spirit of the living God to permeate and to go out onto the streets. And as we minister, people will be totally transformed because of the Holy Spirit.
So there you go. That was a lot of fun. I mean, I know it's just a 1-day thing or a 2-day thing, and it doesn't fix the world, but it's really nice to be with a whole bunch of people out having, a good time, listening to people that are, having a struggle, and at least you become more aware of what's going on, because there's no single fix to all this stuff. But anyway, that was, we've gone up there twice, and it's been a lot of fun. We were working today on a trip to Red Bluff and possibly kind of studying homelessness up there in Red Bluff. So we were working on that today, and hopefully we'll do that in about a year, actually. And then Bill might lead a trip to Cuba, so I was working on that today. And that would be fun as long as Bill brings me back a cigar. So anyway, listen, thanks so much, you guys. Keep on those grants, keep at it, get us some more people for the 21st. We'd love to. I love putting people through this. We're not perfect and we don't know it all, but it's something. We're sending out a couple places, giving you $1,000, and so it makes our world a little better in our special little way. All right,